See, well, you know what? Never mind. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. When it rains, it pours for the San Francisco 49ers. They lose in embarrassing fashion to the Packers, regardless of who's not in, who's out with injuries. That was a embarrassing performance and likely is the cherry on top that ends our season. Now, the 49ers drop to last place in the division. There's about a 15% chance that they win 6 games. The division falls their way. I'm not even going to say the word. It is what it is, man. I couldn't be more disappointed right now in the San Francisco 49ers. And like I'm not like when your parents they tell you they're disappointed, like you do something dumb and you're expecting to get yelled at, and they're just like, we're just disappointed in you. Like you could tell, like it hits you, like they're just really just we're just disappointed. I'm not mad, just really disappointed. um that was tough, man. That was tough. I felt real bad heading into that game. I did not have very much confidence at all. Um, and the game unfortunately went about how I anticipated it. So I will say that I'm glad that it was a blowout. We talked about this before of how, you know, I didn't want to see the 49ers like inch their way and like claw their way back into the game, be like a one score game and them try to get the win at the end and lose. Like I didn't want that. Like I preferred just a good old fashioned bludgeoning, just end our misery so I could kind of mentally kind of process that they were going to lose. So I had about 3.5 quarters to process that they were going to lose this game. There were little instances of like hope, like, oh, okay, Kittle scores the touchdown, or oh, we get a really nice return that, oh, it's going to set the 49ers up to cut it to a one score lead. And then it's a penalty. Honestly, a terrible penalty. It's not the ref's fault why the 49ers lost that game, but they contributed. But the 49ers contributed just as equally as terrible as the refs. I mean, the refs are awful, but that's just a conversation that is separate outside of the 49ers. The 49ers did not play well. Multiple turnovers isn't going to do it. Debo not is a very difficult catch, but still Debo not being able to hold on to that pass that turned into an interception. We're hearing right now that Aaron Banks looks like he's going to be entering the concussion protocol. So we have that going for us. Any other additional updates to come out of Kyle Shanahan's presser, I'll let you guys know. But all I could imagine is it's going to be pretty ugly around these parts. People are upset. People are angry, frustrated, sad. A lot of emotions that just never went away from the end of the Super Bowl. And it's just crazy to be here, to be honest. Just crazy to see how far the 49ers have kind of slipped into this area. It's not what I expected of this group. We saw like signs of this in training camp, but I didn't think that it would, translate this bad into the season. Um, so it's just tough, man. Just absolutely tough. Just unfortunate performance. Um, and again, it's like, how do we even, is it Brandon Allen's fault that he's a backup getting, a first opportunity at a start? Like, no, not really. He's a backup for a reason, you know. I don't know. No Bosa, no Trent Williams, no Charvarius Ward, no Talanoa Hufanga, no Dre Greenlaw, no Javon Hargrave, no Brandon Ayuk. You can only lose so many players and then not have other guys step in. Juwan, I thought, was what did a decent job from an individual performance standpoint. He had a couple balls thrown behind him. Kittle was probably the best player on the field for the 49ers. Leonard Floyd had some opportunities. The defense dropped a couple opportunities. Just tough, man. Tough performance. How come no one choked Debo? It's it's a tough one, man. Like there's no there's no redeeming qualities to come out of that game. Nothing. Like, really. Like, we can talk about individual performances, but this is a team game. Like, we can talk about individual performances until we're blue in the face, but this was a team loss. This was a team collapse. This was a team just from the head coach down, just poor. Bad. Good. Honestly, just all around terrible. Just all around terrible. Even when the Packers are trying to give the 49ers opportunities, even when the Packers tried to give them an interception, tried to give them an opportunity to get momentum, 49ers still couldn't take advantage of it. Still couldn't do it. Team loss. Top to bottom starts with the head coach. Head coach, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, quarterback, defense, special teams. It was one of the worst losses that I think we've seen in a while. And that's saying a lot because we've seen some bad losses. This season is defined by bad losses. This year is defined by inconsistent play. It's also defined by injuries. It's also defined by those things, but no one cares. Everyone has injuries. Everyone has adversity to overcome. It's a part of the game, and obviously, we saw how many injuries there were this season and across the league. Like, it doesn't matter, man. No one feels sorry for the San Francisco 49ers that their team of superstars couldn't get it together and they couldn't figure it out and they couldn't get it done. Like, no one cares. No one is boo-hooing the San Francisco 49ers. Everyone is front row and center to see our demise. They've been waiting for our downfall. Just like the Packers, man. The Packers are relishing this moment. They don't care who was out there. They cooked. They cooked us. And it could have been worse, but they almost made it harder on themselves than they needed it to be, which again kind of showcases that they were a beatable team. And the fact that the 49ers couldn't field a competitive team because there were so many injuries. Um, and, I would say that, the quarterback, Brandon Allen, I thought he was okay. I didn't think he was good. I thought he was okay. But I think part of the situation with Brandon Allen kind of continued to rear its head of why I think a lot of us felt that the 49ers should have played Joshua Dobbs. Dobbs can create when things break down. Dobbs has that ability to play outside of structure, and that could be the reason why Shanahan didn't go with Dobbs. He doesn't want a guy who can play outside of structure. He doesn't want a guy who can create outside of his scheme and not execute his scheme, you know, like I don't know. I don't know what else. I mean, obviously, um, Brandon Allen has been the backup since training camp. Um, but he had a broken finger, and I don't know. I don't know, man. This is true. Kyle does. It's one of my, if I had to critique Kyle, it's one of my biggest critiques of Kyle is he needs everything to go a very specific way. And I think just the quarterback position inherently isn't, it's a lot of ad libbing, um, adjustments on the fly, reads on the fly. And you have to be able to have guys who can create outside of the structure of the play and do other things. And I don't know, I felt Dobbs gave them their best chance today because his ability to create. And then we saw the fumble uh that would have kind of been that situation where he could have maybe ran up the gut, maybe tried to escape, try to make a play. uh I don't know. It turned into a fumble, though. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey had a fumble. Tough day. Tough day to be a 49er fan. Tough day to just kind of realize that our season has just kind of slipped away right in front of our eyes when it shouldn't have been. I think that's the hardest part that I'm dealing with. I think I'm dealing with the 49ers, you know, if they don't drop these ridiculous games to your division opponents, to the Cardinals, to the Rams, to the freaking Seahawks, you have the ability to go into Lambeau and be like, all right, we're going to play our backups. We're going to do our best. No pressure because we're 8-2, right? How much did we hear about the 49ers should be 8-2? Okay, well, you're not 8-2, and because of that, the war of attrition finally set in, and when you needed a big performance because your season's on the line, you couldn't get it. Couldn't get it. Yeah, that was also kind of an embarrassing poor part of the game when they had two 12-man penalties in a row. Um That was a brutal game, man. That was a brutal game. It's a brutal performance. And The one of the problems too is it's a slow burn. It's a slow burn. Like this is we've seen it. It's like like when there's like a train coming and like a car breaks down in the crossing part on the train tracks, and it's like you can that and the train's going like 15 miles an hour, and you can see the train, you can hear the train going "Brr, brr," like you can see it coming, and you're just like people are franticking, like trying to get the car off the tracks, like and it's just slowly approaching, and then finally it just crashes into you, destroys the car. Nothing you can. That's kind of what this season feels like. It just feels like we've been watching a slow motion train accident since the end of the Super Bowl, and we've been entrenched in off-season drama. Uh, you could tell that this team was not in rhythm in training camp. If you guys remember, one of the biggest trends that I talked about in training camp was coverage sacks. There was no rhythm. They weren't in rhythm in training camp. I remember, uh, I think I think it was one of the most disgusting practices of the year was 8-7 day, Dwight Clark Day. All of the alumni were out there at practice, and it was just a gross practice, like where I left feeling like I feel right now. I felt like that on 8-7 day, that this wasn't good. And that was my fourth training camp that I've now covered. I've never felt that. I've never walked away from a practice feeling like I did on 8-7 day, final day of training camp that's open to the public. It's just like you see the signs and you're just hoping that it's like, all right, get it together, guys. Focus up, come together. Because these things happen all the time. That's the other part about it. It's like we've seen teams have bad starts. We've seen teams look disjointed. We've seen teams have to scramble just to get into the playoffs, and they get into the playoffs and they make a bunch of noise. Like we've seen this year in, year out. So when you're talking about this team, the hope is that they would come together and they would correct the mistakes and they would stop shooting themselves in the foot and they would stop being their worst enemy and they would get it together, and it just never happened. And that, I think, is for me where the frustration of this season like really kind of pisses me off a little bit. Um so I think we have enough body of work to recognize that this isn't a good team. It's just not. We just not a good team. But they should be a good team. They have the players to be a good team. They have the pieces to be a good team. Painful, man. Not one thing about that game, like the whole time, it just felt like, oh, this is how our season went. Oh, yeah, this is emblematic of how our year went. Oh, oh, talk about having a just disgustingly bad taste in your mouth. Um, I think that kind of exemplifies what this game is. Because now what do you do? What do you do? Wild card chances, they have 15% chance to make the playoffs, and that's assuming they win their next 6 games, which includes on the road to the Bills, home against the Packers, home against the Rams, on the road against the Dolphins, Lions week 17, and the freaking Arizona Cardinals to end the year on the road. Uh I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Like I really don't know how they they keep this rolling. Like, what are they supposed to do? Like, how are they supposed to move forward? How are they supposed to get these wins? I don't know. Shout out to Robert. Appreciate the super sticker. Feels like 2020 team talent, but just flat. Yeah, it does kind of feel like the 2020 team because they didn't have they had a lot of injuries. And I mean, I don't know. The reason why it doesn't feel like the 2020 team is because they had their quarterback all season. I would say that. I would say that's one of the differentiating factors is they had Purdy, you know. They had him here until this game. So, honestly, I don't think this was like the 2020 season because 2020 was dead on arrival. You had that horrible loss to open up against the Cardinals. Then you had the New York apocalyptic games back to back where you lose half of your team. You lose Solomon Thomas and Nick Bosa on the same drive for the year. You lose your quarterback, or no, your quarterback. Yeah, no, Jimmy got, I think that was a high ankle sprain year. Um, is I think it was different. I think it was different because this team had all the opportunities. They had they should have beat the Cardinals. They could have beat the Seahawks. They would have beat the Rams. The woulda, coulda, shoulda. 2024 49ers. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. And I think that's the most frustrating part about it is that it's not like at least 2020 we knew the team wasn't going far. 2020 we knew the season was chalked up very early on. The difference with this season is they shouldn't be in this position. They shouldn't be here, but they are here. That's the difference. They should have won games. They could have won games. They could have a very positive record right now. That is the difference between this year and 2020. They're not the same. They're not built the same. They don't have the same built-in excuses. Uh this team just isn't good. This team just isn't good right now. They're not playing like a team. Um I think I missed this super chat. And if I did Ghost Pirate, I apologize. I think I missed this one. In your opinion, why do you think special teams has been such a problem this year? I I don't have a good answer for you. Special teams hasn't been good for multiple years, and it hasn't been good dating back to the last time they fired Hightower. So it hasn't been good for multiple seasons. Um, beyond, and it hasn't been good beyond this defense, this special teams coordinator. It's been bad for multiple seasons. It's bad. It's been bad, I think. I don't know. Do we say for the entirety of the Kyle Shanahan era it's been bad? They've had some kind of miscues or issues along the way. So yeah, man, it's a tough situation. It's a tough situation to be in. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to get them in. But what do I think has been such a problem? You did ask me what the biggest problem is this year. I think this year's been the penalties. Feels like this season and the penalties and the undisciplined play and everyone feeling like they're lost on special teams, I think it's been the biggest issue, whether it's your own players running into your returner, whether it's your returners, fumbling the ball, whether it's I remember against the Packers literally watching Ronnie Bell fall flat on his face in the middle of the field, standing around no one, and he just fell. And then the returner ran right by him on the ground. Like, can't tackle. They're they're not assignment sound. Execution errors all over the place. Brutal, man. And again, I think the special team starts with Kyle because they've already gone. If they were to fire Schneider this year, that's two special teams coaches that they've gone through. You now going to a third special teams coach. Is it really the coach? Or is it how special teams is constructed? Is it the depth that they're trying to build special teams with? Lack of special teams depth? Um, is it the injuries? Is the injuries playing a role into why uh, they don't have good special teams because they don't have the depth, and the depth just gets bumped up when you have all these injuries and they're constantly playing guys off the streets to fill special teams roles, and there's no rhythm. That like there's no like we talk about how top heavy the uh we talk about how top heavy the roster is, but when you understand that your depth is what makes up special teams, the young players that you draft, the undrafted free agents that you bring in, those are the guys who make up your special teams. So for me, it's also an indictment on back end depth. It's everything, man. It's everything. Kyle Shanahan is an overrated coach. The two Super Bowl appearances are fool's gold now. Many excuses will fans make for him. I mean, I have no issues with you being frustrated with Kyle Shanahan this season, for sure. But I don't know how it makes those two Super Bowls fool's gold because first of all, it's extremely challenging to get to the Super Bowl. Um, so I don't think you can take that away from Kyle or those teams. You can talk about how Kyle contributed to both those losses. Um, and you can talk about how now Kyle uh, isn't in a good spot with this season. But the Super Bowl appearances are Super Bowl appearances. I don't know how you can take that away from someone. Um, did he do what we needed him to do with those Super Bowl appearances? No. No. No, he did not. He did not. Um, he choked and made no adjustments to Andy Reid. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong at all. Kyle Shanahan lost two 10-point fourth quarter leads. That's why I now currently have fourth quarter 10-point lead PTSD that I discovered this year, week 3 against the Rams. No one's sitting here saying Kyle Shanahan did great in the Super Bowl. He lost both Super Bowls. So no one's saying that. So two completely different conversations that we're having. But bottom line, Kyle hasn't been good this year. Kyle hasn't been good enough this year. Brock Purdy hasn't been good enough this year. Fred Warner hasn't been good enough this year. You know, Chris Forrester hasn't been good enough this year. Nick Sorensen hasn't been good enough this year. Brian Schneider hasn't been good enough this year. That's what happens when you lose. That's what happens when you find yourself in this position. No one's been good enough. What about McCaffrey? McCaffrey hasn't been good enough. McCaffrey, I still don't think is 100%. But again, like, I don't think there's any moral victories to take away from this one. I don't think there's a single moral victory here. So, because we're talking about team performance. Individual performances to me aren't really like a moral performance or like a moral victory right now. Um, because we have to judge this group as a team, not as individuals. And they didn't play as a team. They lost as a team. They didn't execute as a team. It's not just one guy. It's everyone, and it starts with Kyle Shanahan. It starts with Kyle Shanahan, and it's a trickle down. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see like where this season goes from here on out. It's going to be really fascinating to see how this team is managed, uh, how they move forward, like what's the thought processes, what's the are they I'm gonna imagine they're gonna keep fighting until it officially says 0% chance of getting into the playoffs. But I mean, no one right now thinks that the 49ers can go into Buffalo and get a win. Brutal year. Brutal season, brutal off season. I think the off season uh is a huge and like a huge foreshadowing moment. You always think that a team will get it figured out and they'll get it together. And, you know, that's why I always talk about the first 4 weeks as being a preseason. You look at the first 4 weeks and they're inconsistent up and down, and you're like, all right, well, let's wait and see. Let's get the body of work together. Let's get 6 games under our belt. Let's get 7 games under our belt. And when they started to do that, you realize, okay, this is who they are. Uh, they are an inconsistent team. They are who they're trying to tell us, and I think that's tough to kind of rationalize, because the talent that they have, you know what they're capable of based on what we've seen in the past, and then just felt like everything that could go wrong went wrong this season, and it contributed to the season being absolutely just terrible. You know? I mean, I think if we're gonna put this up there, I think this might be the worst. I think this is the worst season under Kyle Shanahan. I think this is the worst year. Um, and some people are probably already starting to type into, well, what about 2020? 2020, like I talked about, we were cooked from injuries through the first 3 weeks. You go back to 2017, where they started out 0-9. They completely gutted the roster and flipped the roster. Yeah, no one was expecting the 49ers to win anything. Uh, going 0-9, I was like, hell yeah, 0-9. Don't win a game. Be the first overall pick. Go. I was a big Baker Mayfield guy. I was like, yeah, don't win a game in 2017. Go draft a quarterback. Go get, at the time, Deshaun Watson. Go get someone, uh, you know, at a different time. Uh, so 2017, no one cares about. 2018, they lose Jimmy Garoppolo in the middle of their third game. So that season was cashed right away, because we knew CJ Beathard and uh you know no disrespect to CJ Beathard or Nick, but those guys weren't going to do it. And 2020 chalk due to injury. So yeah, I would consider this the worst season under Kyle Shanahan, just from an execution standpoint, from a complementary football standpoint, from it feels like that cloud that was cast over this team after the Super Bowl loss never left. And it feels like it just followed them over. Um, Dan said Kyle saying Brandon Allen played good. I listen. I'll say this about that. Um, I honestly don't expect any coach to come out in front of the media and bury one of his guys, especially a guy getting his first start with this team. Uh, yeah, I don't have a problem with. I don't think Kyle even has to be factually honest with that being the case. Um, I think as a coach, you're gonna try to attack these answers than what we think. And I think that's the difference. I think we can all agree that he had some good moments. I don't think he played a good game. I don't think Brandon Allen should have. I thought it should have been Josh Dobbs. But again, as a coach, there's a different way of how you communicate about players internally inside your locker room. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a crazy. I don't think that's a crazy thing. Like, I guarantee you, he's going to go in. They're going to go into that meeting room. They're going to watch the tape, and they're going to say, he's going to say, "You sucked here. You sucked here. We need to be better here. We can't do this here." But in front of the media, he has to. He can't go out there and just say, "Oh, Brandon was the reason why we lost." Because one, I don't even think that was the reason why he lost. I don't think that's the reason. I think they lost because everyone was bad, uh, outside of George Kittle. And then, yeah, maybe a couple other players. Kyle should have at least played. Should have at least. Okay, I see. Kyle should have at least a Josh Dobbs package if Purdy has to miss the next game. Dude, if Josh Dobbs can't even get into this game against the Packers, Josh Dobbs ain't getting in. He's not getting in the game. I think Kyle's telling us right there that what he thinks about that. And I guarantee you, Kyle saw or heard everyone clamoring for Dobbs. And, I don't know. This is speculation, but maybe he didn't want to put in Josh Dobbs to give people that satisfaction to do the, hey, why didn't you put Dobbs in sooner? Or why didn't you actually start Dobbs? Why did, So I don't think Dobbs ever had a chance of stepping foot in that game. Because that is something that would come back to Kyle to be questioned of, well, Dobbs looked good when he came in. Why didn't you put Dobbs in? It's just not how Kyle rolls, man. But sucks, man. Sucks. Sucks. Crappy year to be a part of. Crappy year to cover this team. Again, one of the biggest differences is you typically can find the optimism in a lot of these spots. And it's not a lot this year. This year was more about trying to convince yourself that the problems that we were seeing weren't actually who they were. It was more representative. Oh, they had a bad game here. They had a bad series or a bad drive. It's not who they are. It's who they are. They're 5-6. They lost multiple fourth quarter leads yet again. And it put them in a hole where they had to travel to Green Bay to get a win to keep their season alive, and they were a shell of themselves. Did anyone expect the 49ers to go into this game to win? I didn't. I did not expect the 49ers to win this game. So that kind of helped with the blow and the sting of the loss, is that I didn't expect them to win. So I was just waiting for the inevitable. Like I said, I was hoping that this was going to be a blowout loss opposed to a oh, we're going to scratch and claw and get our way back into the game just to lose in a heartbreaking fashion. That's not what I wanted. I wanted the band-aid to be ripped off early, just to be able to like rationalize the loss sooner, than have it to hurt a little bit more than it did. Um, but yeah, I just I didn't want the hope. And that's a really crazy position for me to be in. Um, I feel like I'm pretty optimistic to the point where people like talk shit about me, about just being optimistic as a football guy, as a guy who likes a lot of information, a lot of body of work, a lot of uh circumstantial evidence to be able to define and develop a technique. I'm not a hot take artist. I'm not a guy who's going to come on after every single game and, you know, be super high or be super low. It's just not. If you've followed me and you've watched my shows for years now, you know that I'm pretty even when it comes like, but I tilt optimistic. I wasn't optimistic on this one. Uh, at all. Wasn't optimistic. Uh, this one felt like I told my wife this. I don't know if this is a little dark or what, but I was like, I feel like I'm watching my funeral. Like I feel like I'm watching the inevitable. I know what's going to happen. I know how this ends, but I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna watch it. And that's what happened. It's exactly what happened. It's like watching a train wreck. I apologize if I sound like a downer. Apologize, you know, if I might be saying things too harsh or whatever, but it's not a good day for 49er fans. I'll tell you that. Uh, dude, I'm telling you, I was going through it. I was going through it. Um, because they shouldn't be here. They shouldn't be in this spot. They shouldn't be here. And the only one that they can blame is themselves. And that pisses me off. It really does. Like I try to keep my composure and I try to keep it together, but I'm angry right now. And I'm like not trying to like go scorched earth or anything, but I'm pretty upset right now. And deep breaths. Woosah. Got to rub the earlobes. Woosah. Calm down, big buddy. Calm down. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Boy. Again, like it's just disappointing. It's disappointing. It's just utterly disappointing because they're better than this. And they just played like absolute ass. And that's what's frustrating. Uh So what do we do these next 6 weeks, guys? We've got Bills, Bears, Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals. What do we do with these next 6 weeks? What are the vibes? Do the 49ers start looking to see what depth they have? Do they keep trying to go out there and win these games? What do the 49ers do? They got 6 weeks left with a 15% chance of making the playoffs. What do we do? Is it do we start draft season? You know what's hilarious? Uh Even in 2020, I waited all the way until the very final game. It was like a huge buildup. I was like, guys, I refuse to talk about the draft until the season is officially over. And, we built it up. We built it up. I'm like, I'm not talking about the draft because it was 2020. Everyone knew we were chalked. We were cooked. I was like, I'm not talking about the draft until the final clock strikes. I think it was against Arizona Cardinals that year. And it was like a celebration when drafts is like it was like we finally allowed draft season to happen, and it was honestly a phenomenal draft season that year. But I don't know. Do we start? Do we start, or do we just hold on to the misery of this year and wait until week 18 and build it up, and then second the season ends, full bore 100% draft season from here on out. Rob says Kyle needs to utilize Mason and Garendo and stop riding hard on CMC. Yeah, it felt like the 49ers could have utilized a better RBBC, running back by committee, today. The fact that Jordan Mason has been iced out, and you got national broadcast guys talking about it. Like, we talk about Jordan Mason all the time because we've been talking about Jordan Mason since his rookie training camp, and we've been advocating hard for the Jordan Mason hive started right here with me and Justin. Justin was put me on, and the second I started to see him in training camp, we were like, Mason's got to make this team. Mason's got to make this team over TDP, Trey Sermon, JaMychal Hasty. He's got to make it over everyone. They did it, and they've been very reluctant to play him. And whenever he's played, he's just done well. But for whatever reason, I feel like Kyle Shanahan despises the questions that he gets when he's asked about not playing Mason for whatever reason. I don't know what that's about. Why are you upset about playing a player that you have that you know is good? What is upsetting about that? Hey, Kyle, you have a player on your roster who's really good. Why don't you play him? Because like he gets all grumpy about it. It's like that's a great problem to have. You have too many good running backs. Oh man, too many good running backs. Justin, tell him, bro. Tell him he is a perfect complement to CMC, and they don't use him. I fully understand trotting out Christian McCaffrey on third down. I think he has to be the third down back. He just has to be. He has to be that guy. He's phenomenal in pass protection, and he's great out of the backfield. So that makes sense to me. But you can get in a rotation in first and second down. You can get in a rotation on early down work when, you know, Kyle has stricken me as very stubborn. It's one of the it's one of the it's one of the first things that I've talked about with Kyle. I talked about this in early early on, and like you were able to see that Kyle is very particular with how he goes about things. Or as people typically call it, like the my way or the highway kind of a thing. Um, that's very much Kyle, my way or the highway, and that's why he has a doghouse. That's why um, it's one of my least favorite character traits about him, because I think it diminishes talent that you have and could have. Um, Again, we don't know everything that's in the inner workings of those four walls. I have to say that. I can only speak from the outside perspective looking in and how I feel right now as I'm upset after that performance and not liking the way that they managed that game, managed the season. Manage off-season contract negotiations. It's all the same. It's all mixed in together. It's all intertwined, and it all makes for a very frustrating year. Um, what's interesting about this from Josh says Kyle's his own worst enemy. Well, the 49ers were their own worst enemy this year. And is that emblematic of them taking on the personality of their head coach? So I don't know, man. Very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. I mean, let's be honest. Why would they sign Mason? They won't even play him now. Why would they pay him? It makes 0 sense for the 49ers to not use Christian McCaffrey and then pay him to just not use him. Um, you know, like it's gonna suck when Jordan Mason signs with the Seahawks. It's gonna suck when he signs with the Arizona Cardinals. It's gonna suck. Jordan Mason. I was terrified that they were gonna cut him and he was gonna get picked up um by the Seahawks, but hey, someone in division is gonna sign him or they're gonna try. This quote from Keyshawn Nixon about the 49ers. He says, quote, "It's the NFL. It's not an excuse. We didn't have our quarterback. We won 3 games. So we don't want to hear it. We came to play. They should have came to play." I got no problems with that. Honestly, don't have any problems with that. What other questions you guys got? Come on, pepper me with questions. Pepper me with what you guys are thinking, what you're feeling. Throw some questions at me. Let's talk about it. We're full blown therapy session at this point. Um, so use it as a venting session. I'm venting, as you can see. I've been pissed off. I'm pissed off. uh, see the thing is like I'm one of those quiet guys until I'm not. And so I'm really not trying to get to that point where like I cross that threshold. I can feel myself reaching that threshold and I'm like trying to walk myself back. Like, yeah, I'm working myself up. I'm like I walk myself back. You guys have never seen me cross that threshold at all. And it's a place I hope to not be, but that's kind of just how I'm feeling right now. You see them shutting down Bosa longer. Um, I don't. No, I don't. I don't. I really don't see them shutting anyone down until the till it's mathematically done. I don't see them shutting anyone down. Um, should we lose the rest of the season so we go get Gentry? Should we or will we are two different conversations. Obviously, if the 49ers are eliminated from playoff contention, we're going to want the best pick possible. But I don't know. Tanking is an interesting thing because tanking requires players to willingly not play well to have someone else come in and replace them. Tanking is a weird thing in the NFL because it's just the guys have to go out there to willingly lose for guys to come in to replace them. That's a weird spot to be in. But obviously, from the outside perspective, thinking of the draft and thinking, yeah, get the lowest possible draft pick so we can get the best pick possible. Yeah, for sure. I understand that. What do you think should be the main focus of this draft? Offense, defense, O-line, linebacker, defensive line. In my final mock draft of this past season, I had the 49ers selecting two defensive linemen. And people call me crazy. They like freaked out on my final mock draft because I had them taking a defensive end and a defensive tackle. I had them taking outside D line, edge, and interior defensive lineman. And they called me crazy. They said, "What are you smoking, Brad? Like, you call yourself a draft expert? You call yourself this? You call yourself that? You're going to take two defensive linemen with the first two picks? What are you on?" Well, it sure as hell looks like two defensive linemen in the first two rounds sure as hell would have helped the San Francisco 49ers this year because they needed more edge help and they needed more interior defensive line help. Offensive line needs to be better. Offensive line isn't good enough. Offensive line is too inconsistent. Offensive line, they need a change. They need a shakeup. I love my boys up front. It takes a lot for me to, you know, be ultra critical of the O line because I already know that they're already ultra criticized way more than they deserve to be criticized. But we need a change. We need a change at multiple spots. 49ers got Trent. 49ers got Pooney. 49ers need to reevaluate the other positions. I think they need linebacker. I think they need safety. They need cornerback. They need running back. They need to get serious about about the O-line. They need to get serious about it. Like, their inability to run the ball is one of the reasons why they're in this spot. Is one of the reasons why they're here. Running the ball consistently. Hell, bro, you can go back. You can go back to the Rams game. I can think to where they should have scored a penalty if we get to backer, or they should have scored a touchdown if we get to backer with our O-line. Flat out whiff, tackled, field goal, 49ers lose the game. If they get the block, it's a touchdown, 2 scores, 2 touchdown lead. It was week 3. Frustrating. I'm frustrated right now. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. You think they'll fire the DC this season? I don't know what they're going to do. I have no idea what they're going to do. I have no idea. I don't know. Because if you're a hot shot DC, do you want to come be the DC of the 49ers right now? Like, all right, I think this is going to be one of the bigger questions. I went back looking for this one. I think this is going to be one of the bigger questions throughout the rest of the season. Should we fire Kyle or one more prove it year? This is how I feel. And I know a lot of fans want to fire Kyle. I know a lot of fans want to move on. I don't think you fire Kyle this year. I don't think that's what you do. I don't think that helps you. You got to give Kyle the opportunity to fix whatever this was this season. You have to allow him to dig out of his own hole. He put himself here. I'm not going to sit here and say like I don't understand people who want to fire him. I understand why you want him fired. You are disappointed, you're disheveled, you can't stand the way the season had turned out, and so you want to change, you want to move on. You want to gut this feeling, you want to get past it. I get that for sure. But again, you fire Kyle, you're firing everyone. You're firing John Lynch. You're firing Chris Kosurik. You're firing Bullocks. You're firing Holland. You're firing Forster. You're firing everyone. You're firing Greasy. You're firing everyone. You're firing the training staff. You're firing Schneider, which actually probably some of you would welcome. You might be like, oh, well, if we fire Kyle, we fire Schneider too. Well, you'd be like, oh yeah, for sure, even better. No, it's you're getting rid of everything. You're getting rid of everything, and I think you owe it to Kyle and what he's built to fix this. You have to, man. You have to give him an opportunity to fix this. If let's say this season, let's say we give them an opportunity to run it back and they fall flat on their face. Yeah, we're gonna have real conversations then. We're gonna have real conversations then about Kyle's future and how hot his seat really is. I will give you that validation. But this year, just a lot of weird stuff has gone on. Again, they're multiple possessions away of having a winning record. They so what for me to be able to say confidently it's time to move on from Kyle Shanahan, I need to see him have another opportunity and I need to see what he does with it. That's just how I honestly feel. I understand why fans want to fire and move on from Kyle, but I am of the belief you keep Kyle, you retool whatever you need to retool, whether that's the staff, whether you get rid of Schneider, you bring in a fresh face, you bring in new special teamer, maybe you bring in an offensive coordinator, uh, someone to add to the room of Forster. Like I think Kyle misses Mike McDaniel so bad it's not even funny when it comes to like creativity and ingenuity. I think obviously Kyle's a good play caller for the most part and things like that, but I think I don't know if it's like just getting an injection of a different thought process, a different ideology to make you think, to make you add new wrinkles. They need something new. They need an injection. So I think you give Kyle the opportunity to make the adjustments, hopefully open up to bringing in an OC or someone who can come in to help aid the offense and help inject some creativity into it. And then we'll see. Then we'll see after that. Then we'll see with one more draft class. Then we'll see with how these rookies this year develop into second year players. Then we'll see. I think I still, even after where we're at and how bad of a season this has been, and I still think that you got to give him one more shot at this. You got to give him a chance to clean up his mess. Um, you know, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. I think he's done enough, regardless of how that may be perceived. I think he's done enough to earn that, and you give him that. But if that requires, you know, John Lynch, you know, I don't know, playing more of a getting a little bit more power inside that dynamic. Um, maybe kind of allow Kyle to step back a little bit, which I know I think is asking a lot because it's Kyle's team, so Kyle's going to run his team how he wants to run his team. But I don't know. Adjustments need to be made, right? Adjustments need to be made. We need to find the winning sauce, and right now we don't got it. Uh, well, I think this is one of the key elements too. Is if York's willing to pay, not only is York going to have to pay to bring in someone, but he's also going to have to pay John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan to go away. So he would double pay. He would double pay. Remember, they both signed contract extensions heading into the 2023 season. So You have to keep that in mind. Jed York would also be on the hook for paying those guys, just like he paid Chip Kelly to go away, Jim Tom Sula to go away. You would have to pay. And you would take a substantial step back, most likely. That would be the thought. You can't guarantee they're just back to winning with a new system. McMillan, come on down. Bro, if you can get McMillan onto this team, whew, hell yeah. I'm right there. Get Mike Evans 2.0 onto this team. You have Ayuk coming back, Pearsall, McMillan, Juwan Jennings. Then you just throw the ball up. Someone would have to be open. And Hendricks hits the nail on the head. If the 49ers won the Super Bowl, we really don't care. We really don't care, you know? I wouldn't. Obviously, I would care, but I would rest and sleep well at night knowing the 49ers got the monkey off their back and they got the 6th ring. This is, I think, the worst. I think this is the biggest contributing factor to the toxicity this season is when you lose that Super Bowl and you lose it the way you did, and this fan base has been starved, absolutely starved for a Super Bowl, and it just gets dangled in front of them every year, and then it gets snatched away in the most heartbreaking fashion. Fans are tired. Fans are worn down. They're just worn down. They're worn out. I think the team is worn down. I think the team is wore out. They've actually played these games. They've actually been the ones responsible for the outcomes of those games. How do you think those guys feel? You think we feel bad? Imagine how they feel inside that locker room, watching their season slip through their fingers. Watching this core group that was assembled that could have been dynastic not realize a Super Bowl. You know how sad that is? You know how, if you really remove yourself from your fandom and you try to put yourself in the shoes of the Fred Warners, of the George Kittles, of the Trent Williams, of the Joe Staleys, of these kinds of guys who put it all on the line week in, week out, and are some of the best to ever suit it up to be here in this spot, 5-6. Brutal. 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 Those guys don't want this. Those guys want to be champions. And can you imagine the frustration that they're feeling? Bring DeMeco back. I said it before he left. He's going to be one of the greatest head coaches in the league before he even signed with anyone else. After the year one, you could see how good of a coach DeMeco Ryans was because he's the full package. DeMeco can scheme it and he can lead. That's why DeMeco is a phenomenal coach. He connects with his players. He knows how to. He played the position. That's why DeMeco's a GOAT, man. He has both things. He has the schematics and he has the interpersonal leadership qualities. He can connect to his players. He can motivate his players. And I think that's why Kyle's been so scheme dependent. He's not a motivator. He's just not. He's the opposite of a motivator, and I think that's why we see this season kind of playing out the way we are. He's not a motivator. He's never been a motivator. What he motivates you to do is be too afraid to make a mistake and be put in the doghouse. That's how he motivates you. That's how he motivates these guys. That's why guys like Dante Pettis flame out. If they don't have the thick enough skin to be able to manage Kyle Shanahan's demands and perfection type qualities, you don't see the field. You don't play. You know, he's just not a motivator. He's just not. And I've said that since day one. He's a schemer. He's a X's and O's guy. He's a great mind. He's a great play caller. Has been a great play caller. He's never been a motivator. He's not a Dan Campbell. He's not a Mike Tomlin. He's not. That's never been him. One of my first reads on Kyle Shanahan. He's not a motivator. He's not a guy who's going to put his arm around you. He's going to be a guy who you just made a mistake and he's going to come scream at you and chew your head off and expect you to respond positively. That's how Kyle acts, man. That's who Kyle is. He demands a lot. And guess what? Some people react really well to that. Some people gets them fired up, gets them going, gets them to play better. Other people don't respond to that. And I think that was the biggest disconnect. If we want to go down a rabbit hole, I think that was the biggest disconnect with him and Trey Lance. And one of the things that I talked about with Brock Purdy early on was Brock was Kyle proof. I know you guys have heard me say that before. I said Brock is Kyle proof. That's why he's having success. Because he's able to deal with Mr. Pessimism because he's so rock solid in his faith and his belief that he can manage a pessimistic voice in his ear. And that's my biggest critique of Kyle. Always has been. He's just not a motivator. So now it's like, how do you motivate guys? How do you get guys headed in the right direction? I don't know. Oh boy, I've talked a lot. That's how you know I'm upset. That's how you know I'm upset. I think it's time to get off because I'm just gonna keep yapping all night. Where we go from here, boy, I don't got an answer for you. I don't got an answer for you. So we got cooked. What about the captains? Well, according to Kyle, the captain seemed, positive about the game against the Bucks, but Kyle said that it's going to be a bad game. And he said that everyone looked at him all weird. And he said, "Oh, it's going to be a bad game." And then when it turned into a bad game, he chose that as an opportunity to be like, "I told you so." That to me is my issue with Kyle. Kyle manifests negativity, I think, at this point, his pessimistic views and the way he goes about trying to rally a group of guys by like, all right, lock in. It's going to be a bad game. And we haven't even played it yet. And it's like, then they go out and they have a bad game. And he's like, "See, I told you." And it's like, as a coach? Is that what you're preaching? Do you feel good that like he said it? He said it in a way like, see, like I'm right. I told you. I'm like, Kyle, Kyle. Like, we should not be celebrating and manifesting that we said it was going to be a bad game and then it was a bad game. And then you say, see, we told you so. Like, what? That's the Kyle that I've always been critical of. Is the Kyle that is so pessimistic that at what point are they playing like Kyle? Are they playing like Kyle? Are they playing like him? Like, oh, we're up. We're winning. Oh, but it's going to be a bad game. Oh, we're winning. Oh, but it's going to be a bad game. Oh, well, you're right, coach. Sorry. That struck me when I heard him say that. And to me, it's just like, that's the problem. That is the problem. Is, man, you manifest that type of energy. I don't know. I'm upset. I'm sorry. Today's not a good day for all of us. For Kyle, for me. It's not our best performances. So I'm going to get out of here before I put my foot in my mouth any further. And we'll see what happens. Yeah, what's tomorrow? Monday? Monday. Grumpy Monday tomorrow. Super looking forward to it. No, I am not. But it is what it is. I sure we're going to wake up real happy tomorrow. Real happy, I'm sure. But as always, man, appreciate you guys. I get it. Even if we all don't see eye to eye on what the issues are and why the issues are what they are, hey, at least we're in this together. At least we're suffering together, guys. So we got that going for us. So, anyways, I'm out of here. Appreciate y'all. Y'all the best. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see you.